Hey everybody, welcome again to another episode of The Startup Show brought to you by Inc. Authority. I'm your host, Trevor Rowley. Hey, today we're going to talk about a very important subject, something that I think is vital for all new business owners. And it's the topic of finding and attracting talented people to join your organization. And to help us talk about that today, I'd like to introduce you to Chris Zemi, who is our HR and recruiting manager at Inc. Authority. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Trevor. Glad to be here.
So what is recruiting, first of all? I mean, why is it important?
Recruiting's important because it's how you hire people. It's how you grow your company, right? And being able to go out and find a workforce and pull from a talent pool, it's how your company grows and scales.
Yeah. So a lot of the people that are starting their new LLC at Inc. Authority, many of them are just one person. They're starting the business on their own. Maybe they don't feel like they need a recruiter yet. But how do they prepare themselves for that? How do they know when it's time to find somebody to help them? And then we'll get into it a little bit later on, what if they can't get somebody to help them? How do they do it themselves? But how do they know the time is right to bring on a recruiter?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good time to think about that is to, when you find yourself not being able to have time to recruit because you're really focusing on your business and you're seeing that growth that you want and need, then I think it's time that you can allocate some of those resources and time to hiring a full-time recruiter, right? I think recruiting is definitely an investment in your company because it's going to help you find those right employees that you need.
Yeah. So for a brand new business owner or somebody who's just shortly in business, whether they're doing it themselves or whether they found a professional to help them in the recruiting process, I mean, what are the basic steps? What are the fundamentals of recruiting?
Yeah, so I mean, the basic recruiting process, I mean, it really starts with your sourcing, your interviewing, your screening, and your hiring and your onboarding, right? Yeah. So when it comes to sourcing, I mean, that's always step one. Where are you going to find your candidates? Where are they going to come from? The screening and the interviewing, reaching out to those candidates, setting them up to come see who you are, to ask them the questions that, to kind of give them a better idea of what your company is and what they might be doing. And then extending those offers for those people that you want to hire.
Yeah. Are there any tips, tools that you use for sourcing individuals, tips in the interview process, tips in making offers that you might be able to share with business owners that are maybe doing this for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think, my number one tip is to always, when you hire somebody, it has to be mutually beneficial for you as a business owner, but it also has to be mutually beneficial for the person that you're hiring. It has to be a position that they want to do, right? And so, I mean, asking those questions to that candidate and making sure they have a thorough understanding of what this job is and what your culture is like and everything about your company, to give them that good insight and to show them who you are. I mean, they're going to be working for you, right? In terms of extending offers and onboarding new candidates, I mean, I think it doesn't just end with hiring a new person and letting them go. I mean, you kind of have to have that customer service mentality of making sure your employees are happy, communicating with them, seeing where they're at.
Yeah. So if somebody goes out there and they write, an ad copy for a job, right? They place it, online or job boards or wherever. They get some people calling them and saying, hey, I'm interested, I'm raising my hand.
Yeah.
And you set an appointment and they come in, what kind of questions can you ask? What can't you ask? How do you look for red flags maybe so that you make sure you're hiring the right person?
Yeah. Oh, great question. So, essentially when it comes to asking questions, a lot of it kind of depends on what type of job you're interviewing them for. Is it a high pressure labor job? Is it an office administrative job? I would say you would want to base your interview and structure your interview pertaining to what job they might be doing. If it's a higher pressure, stressful job, ask them behavioral questions on how they handle stress, on how they handle pressure. If it's an administrative job, ask them questions specific to organization, to their computer skills, to their background, right?
Yeah. I know job markets go up and down. Sometimes there's a lot of candidates available. Sometimes it's hard to find candidates. It depends on the skills that are required as well. I know at the time of filming this particular episode, the job market's tight, right?
Yep, always.
It's hard to find people. So what kind of encouragement or help would you give to somebody that's like just having a hard time? Maybe the ad that they've got isn't drawing candidates. What things might they tweak or change to maybe try and draw in a bigger pool of candidates to choose from?
Yeah, I think just being creative with your recruiting process. I can't tell you how many times I've put up an ad thinking, hey, I'm going to get tons of candidates, it's worded perfectly, and I get nothing. it happens. I mean, I think you have to put your ads through a proper test and change things up if it's not getting you the results that you need. I mean, there's been a few times where I've just changed little things here and there, whether it's job title, whether it's duties, things like that. There's so many different triggers to what people see. There's a lot of psychology behind what goes into what people see in a job ad. Test different things, it'll provide different results.
Okay. And what about candidates that are out there that are looking? What are they looking for in job opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think when you're talking to people throughout the interview process, it's always important to know what they're looking for. And I think when you interview somebody, you really have to get to know them personally to some degree, because essentially this job is their livelihood. I think in terms of what people look for, they look for, what's the pay? That's always number one. But I think there's also some intangible qualities to what people can also get out of a job, whether it's work-life balance, whether it's weekends off, whether it's having autonomy in their job. I think there's those intangible qualities that are in a job that people also look for. And when you interview people, you want to get to know them personally so you can understand a lot of those aspects of what they're looking for.
So there's so much time and effort that's put into, looking for that right person, drawing up a job ad, going through the interview process, and it can be stressful, making a decision, who shall I offer this job to, who's not quite right. But let's say that a business owner gets through that process, right? A decision's made, an offer is extended, it's accepted, and now they're there on day one. How important is onboarding to make sure that all of the work and effort you've put in pays off?
Yeah, onboarding is huge. And I think that's where having that good customer service mentality comes in, because, just because that person showed up on their first day doesn't mean they're always going to be happy. Things will come up, right? I think integrating them into the company that they're working at, really showing off the culture and how they'll be a part of that. Making sure that they understand the job design so that there's no surprises when they come in on their first day, right? Yeah. Just always giving them a seamless transition and giving them the information that they need so that they know what to expect when they come in day two, and so that they live a happy life working their job.
Yeah. One thing that a lot of companies tries to do when they bring on new employees is have a celebration for them when they show up, right? I mean, so often it's like, oh, somebody's leaving the company, we're going to get a cake and we're going to have a party for them because they're going. But what about when they join you? That's when there should be a real celebration.
Yeah.
And companies that do that sort of thing, hey, it's your first day, and there's balloons and maybe a cake and welcome. That really puts their mind at ease. Like, I've made a good decision to take this job, and it puts them in a good mindset. So a lot of those creative things like that, I think, are fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What other little helps might you be able to add?
I would say, giving that solid onboarding to a new candidate coming in on their first day, that's number one. It's really continuing that relationship as you would with a client, right? But also too, giving them an idea of where they're going to grow with the company. I think a lot of people, when I talk to them, when I interview them, they look for growth and opportunity. Understanding that to giving them a clear vision and where they can grow with the company. I think that's important, because you want to give people, the idea and the fact that they're going to grow and they're going to succeed, and there's room for growth. Yeah. I think opportunity is a huge deal with a lot of different people.
Yeah, I totally agree. And being transparent through that whole process. As much as the employer is interviewing the candidate's interviewing the employer too, to see if it's a good fit.
Absolutely.
And so just understanding that that's the process and being prepared to engage in that process and being honest and transparent, I think produces really the best results. So to recap, there's sourcing. And that comes in a couple of different ways, right? Before you can source, you've got to determine, well, what is the job? What's the job requirements? What are the duties? You've got to put that together so that you can put that out there in a job ad or copy. But then it's like, where do I place that? Do I use the big job boards online? Do I use something more local to my community? But there's the sourcing, right? Then there's the actual vetting. Who do I want to bring in and see based on all the responses that come in? There's the interviews themselves. There's the decision to hire. There's the offer. There's day one, there's onboarding. What about training after that?
Yeah, training's it's integral to the success of a new person coming into a company. I think you have to have a thorough training process so that that person understands the design of the job. They understand what they have to get better at, what their strengths are. I think if you provide an employee with solid training, they're only going to go up, right? I think it's pretty common, really, for a company to hire employees that don't have experience in the industry that they're being hired on for. And so I think training and development, if you can provide a good structure for that in the beginning of a new employee's career with a company, it's only going to help that employee.
Yeah. Well, great information. Appreciate you coming today and sharing it with us. You know, I've worked with so many entrepreneurs over the years, and all of them have this same problem, right? They start the business on their own, they're growing the business, they need to delegate some things and get other people involved so they can continue the growth. It scares them to death, the process. They're not exactly sure how they should do it. So everybody's always looking for information and help and tips to make that happen, because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to scale the business. You're going to have other hands to come in there and do some of the work. So appreciate all you do for us here at Inc. Authority and the information that you've shared with those that are reviewing the program today. Appreciate you joining us. Thank you also for joining us today on this episode of The Startup Show. As always, it's brought to you by Inc. Authority, a one-stop shop for all of your entrepreneurial needs. I'm your host, Trevor Rowley, reminding you, hey, hit the like button and also make sure to hit the notification button with the bell turned on so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We appreciate you and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.